Are we getting close? Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you. Jackie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Farfan,
Present.
Commissioner Pierce,
Here.
Commissioner Lubes,
Present.
Vice Chair Davis,
Present.
and Chairperson Mona.
I'm here. Presentations tonight. Number one, Scott Morgan will give an update on operations at the lakes.
Noticed I'm number one. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, good evening, Commission. Scott Morgan, General Manager over at the Lakes El Segundo. Been a while since I've seen you. It's good to see you, and it's good to be here. So I want to give you a couple updates on what's been going on at the lakes, some of our short-term goals that we've been trying to accomplish in light of the last 5.5 years and a couple months and a few hours. But we're getting back into the play of things over there, and I wanted to share with you some of the things that we've been doing. And in the short term, improvements we've made, thankfully, with the help of Meredith Pettit and her staff. They've been coming over, and they're going to be helping us all next week. We're doing some minor improvements to the banquet room and some of the painting and some of the trim and some of the window coverings that we're extremely appreciative of. But if you've been at the lakes lately, you'll know that there's a staircase that leads to the top deck of the driving range where that had a wood railing that has now been replaced. There's door handles, mechanisms of the interior doors of the clubhouse that have also been repaired. Some of that you're familiar with the push bar that you push to be able to exit. I was having that locked so people couldn't get out until they ordered a couple more beers, but that was frowned upon, so I had to open the doors to let people out. Like Lee, for instance, we would keep Lee locked in until he bought a couple more buckets of balls or a beer. Aerifications, which we obviously in the last 5.5 years we stopped doing in the last 3 times because of what potentially was going to happen to the lakes. But aerification typically takes place in April and October. We now have our next one scheduled for April. And that, if you're familiar with that, it's where they take the plugs out of the greens and then they're filled with sand. They're in need of that, so we're looking forward to be able to do that come late March and early April. And after the last, the October 3rd council meeting where things were, we were put back into operation mode, if you will, we were then able to open up our books for catering. So now we've opened up, catering throughout next summer. Which is our big months. June, July, and August is our big months for weddings and what have you. So as of right now, there's one Saturday that's booked. So if you know if anybody is looking for a weekend event for this summer of June, July, and August, please send them my way to info@golftolakes.com. Let's see. I've also each year I revisit our neighboring hotels. You know all the hotels that we have in our area in the city. I'll often go to them and meet with the front desk managers to let them know who we are, that we're there, we are open, that we welcome their guests to come over and join us for either breakfast, lunch, or golf. We've already started our preparations for this summer's 2018 Summer Junior Golf Program with the help of Josh Alpert over at the Lakes. We expect registrations to be fully operational and ready, up and running by March 1st. Another small improvement that we've done is range balls. The driving range is our #1 revenue source at the lakes. We've now got the go-ahead to replace the current balls. So in the next 2 weeks, if you were to come over, our entire inventory of range balls will be replaced with brand new range balls. And lastly would be my last point is to talk about in light of everything that's happened in the last 5.5 years, I really enjoyed seeing the love that's come out for the lakes. I've taken a lot of pride in that. I think with all that love that's come out, it was a direct message to me that me and the staff and our crew that we have over there must have been doing something right in these last 5 years with all the love that's come out for the lakes. So I want to thank all those out there that have spoken up and have shown their love for the lakes. And each day we have people coming in that are glad that we're open and continue to come and support us. So that's my quick report. If you have any questions, I'm certainly open to questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Scott, you mentioned that the junior golf starting in March. Do we put something in the recreation brochure about the junior golf program at the lakes?
Not on a regular basis. And so we have an opportunity. I know Scott has at one point taken advantage of our advertisement specials that we have. And we'll talk about that again this year, specifically probably with Josh and Good Swings Happen, and make sure that all of that information is in this year's brochure.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think we're trying to do with all of our programs is make sure that they blend better in with the community. And as you have the junior programs, you know, a lot of our youth programs are done in the brochure for Parks and Recreation. So perhaps you can get that in there, and as we talk about a lot of our facilities, is see to it that perhaps that, you know, there's priority registration for residents and perhaps a slight discount.
Right.
You know, just something that we're trying to work through a number of our different facilities. So at some point, if you want to perhaps get together with Meredith and see if you can blend it in with our catalogs as they come out quarterly.
Right.
That'd be great.
Will do. And I'll also share that we have 8 weeks of summer camps in the summer. And the last 3 summers, we've sold out of each of those weeks, and we've been able to minimize our advertising we've needed to do. In years past, we've bought a $700 banner for Sepulveda to let people know that registration was now open. We didn't need to put up that banner last summer, and we filled out every camp, which is helpful to save on the advertising side, but absolutely we'd be grateful to be included in that.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you were talking about residents.
Correct. One of my goals is to see to it that the El Segundo facilities, which the golf course is an El Segundo facility, is more marketed and driven towards our kids, and make sure that as we look at, and our parents look at, a lot of the activities for our kids within El Segundo, with that perhaps not being in there, and I'm not talking necessarily advertising, but a park, you know, I would look at a youth program, you know, being in there as part of what our facilities are offering our youth. And you might look at it as advertising, but I look at it as an opportunity for our kids to see that, you know, they have the chance to do a program at the park. They have a pool, everything else, and we have a golf course that does offer youth golf to the kids. So
got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm not familiar with the delineation of responsibilities at the course. Are all repairs the responsibility of the city for everything? And so the reason I ask this is the replacement of the range balls, is that your responsibility and not the city's? And so that wasn't something that you could have spent that money on a repair instead, right? That's
range balls are part of our operating budget, and we'll replace balls each year. So it's part of our operating budget, the budget that we run and for the city. Our fiduciary responsibility to that budget is within that. The balls are in that budget.
So I think the answer is no, it couldn't have been you. You wouldn't have taken that chunk of money potentially and fixed a net, for instance, or a netting instead of replacing the balls this year. That's not something that could have.
Right.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
And number 2 presentation, staff will recap the city's centennial celebration. Meredith.
All right. Well, I gave a presentation at last night's city council meeting, and just wanted to take the opportunity and give credit where credit is due for the centennial year. All throughout 2017, as you know, we had many events and activities and different opportunities for residents to get involved and celebrate the city's 100th birthday. And just so happens that tomorrow is El Segundo's 101st birthday, so it is officially over tonight. So after this meeting, you can celebrate as you wish. But El Segundo TV, you know, does it best and really illustrates everything by video. So that's how we chose to celebrate this evening and thank everybody who was involved, including our committee members. all of the sponsors who donated, whether that was cash donations, in-kind services, and all of the staff who, from all of the departments, Recreation and Parks, but really Police Department, Fire Department, Public Works, Finance, everybody behind the scenes. This year was really special. It was definitely an opportunity for some of our employees to go above and beyond, and they definitely did that. So we want to show you the video.
Centennial Ball. Today, on this day 100 years ago, the Board of Trustees adopted a resolution to organize a volunteer fire department. We now participate in our ceremonial procession to our old fire station on Richmond Street.
As a part of the Cities Where Big Ideas Take Off campaign, El Segundo launched the 100 at 100 initiative. The goal was to welcome at least 100 new businesses to El Segundo by the 100th anniversary of our city. We're thrilled to announce we exceeded that goal, and 118 new businesses joined our community in time for our centennial.
We have a very long-term plan here because we're very happy and we're definitely here to stay. Hashtag El Segundo fans.
For the land of the free and the home of the
Over 100 years ago, one man had a vision to build a brand new refinery for Standard Oil. In just 5 months, his vision became a reality. But little did he know, the company town that sprung up would go on to change the world through culture, technology, and play. That town is called El Segundo.
So one thing that I also informed the city council about last night was the remaining funds are still being reconciled after everything. We are ending our merchandise sales at the end of this month. It's actually on sale for half off right now. So if there's anything you're dying to have with the Centennial logo on it, come get it at Rec Park. But with the remaining funds, the Centennial Committee is working in collaboration with the Arts and Culture Committee on an art project that they'll be commissioning a piece of art and installing it somewhere in the downtown area. So there'll be more information available as that process moves through those collaborative efforts, and we really settle on a budget there. So more to come on that. Thanks for your support.
Thank you, and great job by staff. Anybody have anything? Okay. Thank you. We'll go to public communications related to commission business only, and that is within the subject matter under the jurisdiction of the commission. Let's try to keep it to 5 minutes, okay? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Roger Steele. I'm the regional commissioner for AYSO here in town, and wanted to come back and address everyone. First, to thank you for the opportunity to use campus for the Tournament of Champions that we've kicked off on the 7th of this month. This is going to be concluding this Sunday. For every measure, it's been a success. The feedback we've received on the renovation of the turf at campus has been phenomenal. Other cities declared it superior to their own. So it's been a tremendous success. We look forward to that tournament wrapping up and then the All-Star Tournament kicking off directly afterwards. I'd like to thank Meredith and Sean for their support. The staff at campus has been extraordinarily accommodative and supportive in helping us get the fields just cleared, managed. Couldn't ask for more helpful support from the staff. One comment I would like to make, though, is that while we have games scheduled throughout the weekends, we have practice time set up during the week, there seems to be an increased number of drop-in groups, players, associations coming onto campus and vying for field space. In particular, two Thursdays ago, it was so congested. The gentleman that was there on behalf of the Parks and Rec that was manning the facility came up to me and asked just for help. He felt intimidated by groups. He felt that potentially threatened just for trying to get people off the facilities. So if there's anything we can do to try to ascertain how to address non-reservation groups, outside groups, individuals, or associations coming into campus and taking field space, it does seem to be getting exponentially worse the further along we get since campus reopened in October. I'm at campus probably 5 days a week, and I'm seeing just a continual uptick. There's football clinics being held now with just small groups. There's a coach there trying to put kids through skills clinics, conditioning, things of that nature. It's not just outside soccer groups coming in for small-sided games. It's the gambit of personnel coming in trying to use the facilities without reservations. So first, again, thank you for the opportunity to use the facility for the tournaments. And again, thank you to Meredith and to Sean and to the staff for all the help they've provided. If there are questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, we cannot answer questions at this point, but or ask them. We will be discussing this a little bit later in the agenda. So if you'd like to stick around, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no more public communications, we'll close public communications and move to the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of the Recreation and Parks Commission regular meeting of December 20th, 2017. Anyone?
Move approval.
there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. Okay, we have some unfinished business, but I'd like to move and take one thing out of order in the new business, number 1. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is new business number 1. Consideration and possible action related to adding El Segundo Police Department Lieutenant Raymond Garcia and Officer Scott O'Connor to the Wall of Honor to recognize their courage and service to the El Segundo community. There's a couple of recommendations here. Discuss adding the names of Lieutenant Raymond Garcia and Officer Scott O'Connor to the El Segundo Wall of Honor. 2, approve and nominate the addition of the names, and or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith, who will be speaking? Oh, Lieutenant Lehman.
So I will introduce Lieutenant Jeff Lehman is here on behalf of the El Segundo Police Department. We also have Chief Whalen and retired Captain Bob Turnbull in the audience. And this item came to us. We had to do a little bit of research. This is the first time I've seen an item like this in front of commission, and probably some of you the first time you've seen it. But we provided, I think, the information that you need, the information about the request for adding the names and the reasons why. And Lieutenant Lehman can speak to that. And also the adopted guidelines for the Wall of Honor. It's right here outside of City Hall. And the recommendation tonight is to review the request and basically nominate or approve the request to then move to City Council for ultimate approval. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Evening, Commissioners. I'm sure you read about what occurred at Pacific Theaters. Would you like me to just give you another brief overview, or are you all pretty well understood about what happened out there?
I think, please, Chair. I think we're all very familiar, but I think if there's people watching, I wouldn't mind everyone hearing it again.
Yes.
Okay.
So on April 11th, 2008, we had a couple of officers assigned to the Pacific Theaters. One was Lieutenant Raymond Garcia. Typically, a lieutenant does not work out there, but in this case, one of the officers that was assigned to the theaters that evening was unable to make it, so they started calling around, and he was the one who answered his phone very last minute and decided to go out there. He joined Officer Scott O'Connor, who was already scheduled to work that evening. Pacific Theater detail at the time was an overtime detail. It was because we'd had a lot of problems out there at the theaters, and I assume some of you probably knew about that at the time, but it was getting kind of rough out there. I think by that time we'd had a couple of shootings out there, and I know we'd had a stabbing and some other things. So the theaters, rightfully so, decided to put some officers out there, and just the mere presence of the officers was solving a lot of the problems. At that evening, Lieutenant Garcia and Officer O'Connor were standing in the lobby, which, like I said, we would patrol the structure and we would patrol the parking lot. But what we found was the more time we spent just standing in the lobby in uniform, it really resolved most of the problems. So they were doing that, and they were approached by some Pacific Theaters management and said they were having problems with a subject. I believe this guy had gone into a theater and then come back. He'd watched the majority of a movie and had come back and wanted a refund. And the interaction wasn't going well, so they asked if they could assist in kicking this guy out of the theaters. And when they did, it turned into an altercation right there. The guy started to walk away when the officers were trying to search him. It had built up to the point where they wanted to make sure this guy didn't have weapons. And the guy turned around, pulled a gun out, and aimed at Officer O'Connor's body. Officer O'Connor was able to move. He fired the gun. It hit Lieutenant Garcia in the face, knocked him down, and he continued to shoot. Officer O'Connor and the subject struggled. The guy shot Officer O'Connor once in the chest and once in the shoulder. His vest luckily stopped the one that was in the chest, but the one in the shoulder did strike him. The guy shot some more. I think he missed one round. He definitely hit a patron. He started to run out the door. Officer O'Connor chased him out the door. Another gun battle outside. Lieutenant Garcia, as injured as he was severely injured, was able to get up, go out the door, and assist Officer O'Connor with the gun battle that was outside the door. And these guys were severely wounded. Lieutenant Garcia had 2 major surgeries and I think 6 or 8 follow-up surgeries. He was in the hospital for almost 2 intensive care, unconscious for over a week, and then they moved him to Cedars-Sinai, and we were able to get him out. He missed several months of work, and like I said, he had lots of follow-up surgeries. Officer O'Connor, the funny thing is, not funny, but he survived his wounds pretty well. They were able to do some shoulder surgery and fix his shoulder for the most part. He's actually lost a lot of hearing in one ear because of the original shot, when he was able to move out of the way, the first shot that hit Lieutenant Garcia, the gunfire went off right in his ear and he lost a majority of his hearing. So these guys still suffer today. They both have their own ways they suffer. O'Connor can't hear. He has ringing. Lieutenant Garcia has a lot of headaches. And here we are on the 10-year anniversary, and we thought this was the right time to put him out on the Wall of Honor. We have a wounded officer, Chris Barrett, that was wounded, I think, in 1980. And he's out there, and we thought it was appropriate to see if we could get these 2 guys on there as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Anybody have any questions?
Are there any other wounded officers who should be considered for this honor as well? So Officer Barrett is on the wall already.
Yes.
And there are no other officers.
We have our fallen officers out there, no other wounded officers. A lot of officers get hurt in fights, different things like that. And a lot of officers have medically retired, but this is pretty extreme. These were guys that were brought very close to death. So it's a little different than the other ones that we have.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I think it took too long.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you guys for everything you do. We appreciate it. But yeah, this one's easy.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
We motion, then discuss. I move.
No, go ahead. If you still want to discuss, go ahead.
The right way to do it is make the motion, right? I will make a motion to approve 2 officers to go on the Wall of Honor.
I will second.
Okay, discussion.
No one is more deserving.
I couldn't think of any better person to put on that wall. Persons.
I'm just wondering why it took so long. That's my thing. 10 years. Yes, I understand that portion. This should have happened before.
It would have been nice to have it happen before.
Yes.
And these guys are every bit as heroic as the kids we see every day on the TV with serving over in Iraq and Iran. I watched the video. They have the same humility. Great gentlemen.
Yeah, you're right about that. They're very humble about it.
It's up to me. I'd put the whole department on the Wall of Honor every day.
Absolutely.
We're just going to ask for 2. We're going to make it easy for you.
And so that's it for the discussion.
I want to discuss it for like 15 minutes
Okay.
and talk about how great they are. Seriously, I feel like if we only go that long, we're not doing enough. City Council will have an opportunity to make comments as well.
Absolutely. We're nominating, and it will go to City Council. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's a strong 5-0.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to unfinished business. Consideration and possible action related to establishing a policy for identifying and prioritizing future capital improvement projects in parks and recreation facilities. Meredith, I'm going to throw this to you to start with.
Okay, well, this item is continued. As you know, we've seen different iterations as we've moved through this new process for us over the last few months. I think the discussion tonight, you've received some new information in your packet, and I realize it was only a few days ago that you received more details and descriptions on the projects that were listed. And what we discussed last meeting was that the commissioners would take a first crack at going through the projects, using the score sheet that was developed, and sort of determining how that process would work. One where your scores sort of flesh out and we can have that conversation about how deep into the scores we want to discuss tonight, but also the process. And so I'm really interested to hear how that went for some of you as you moved through the exercise. I can tell you that from a staff side, we have not completed our scoring, and I also realize that there are some scoring questions that you were probably unable to rate just for lack of information, or maybe either lack of information we haven't provided you yet, or maybe the project still needs to be developed and we need to discuss the specific details of each project. So that's sort of where we stand as the staff right now, is we've yet to complete the scoring on our end. But I'd really like to hear from the commission what more information you feel you need to go through this process, and have that conversation about, really at the end of the day, whose score, how are we going to come to one score per project? Is it commissions? Is it a subcommittee? Is it staff? Is it a consensus and we have to, do more discussion on each project and go down the list? And how do we sort of narrow down to actually getting that ranking?
Okay. I know there's going to be some discussion, but I'd like to start off with is I did do it. But I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with because I didn't have enough information. Personally, obviously, what I need is, if we look at the strategic planning portion of it, I want to know answers to the first three questions. Or is the project supported by the cities, or supported by the city's strategic plan? Is the project identified in the Recreation and Parks Priorities Plan? Did the project receive a priority ranking in the most recent community survey? I think staff has that information. And when staff scores it, I need that information also, or would like that information, obviously. But I really want to see those first three, at least some of that information. Yes, I was part of the group that came up with this evaluation worksheet, and we knew then that it was a work in progress. And yes, it is definitely a work in progress. I'm sure that there's more questions, but that's what I've got right now. And who wants to go next?
Oh wait, I'll go last. I want to synergize and write stuff down. And
go ahead, Dave.
So there are a few. Is it appropriate tonight to? You mentioned in your introduction that we might need to kind of dig a little bit deeper into these projects. Is tonight the night that we would be digging deeper into each of these projects, or is this more the planning part, and then the next meeting would be when we would dig more deeper into the projects? Because I do have questions on individual projects that will help me, and comments on others that would help me complete the rest of the score sheets. That's my first question.
I would take your direction. I mean, if you'd rather have it verbally, we could certainly do that. If it's something where you say, I need X, Y, and Z on each project, and we can provide that to you in written format, we can do it that way as well. But I'm happy to answer questions.
One of the things I think I warned us about a couple months when we started this out was our first plow into this was going to be a time eater, right? Because we've got 30 projects sitting in front of us right now, and we probably have questions about each of the individual ones. So I know I was kind of encouraging everybody when we had a smaller calendar, but we haven't seemed to have smaller calendars in the last 6 months or so. So that was the thought that I had. So I think for tonight, I'm looking to see places where maybe in general we're missing information in generalities as opposed to specifics, right? So like, for example, I'll share one of mine, which is I realized that going through the checklist, there wasn't any recognition of recapitalization of existing assets. And I know that some of the ones that I scored lower because they were geared to new projects, new flavored, bringing newness, if you will. That seemed to be the theme. And so that was one of the things I was going to put in the hopper to say, do we need to figure out anything about recapitalization and add or amend something in the current list? So that's where my brain was going for tonight, to try and improve the checklist.
And on kind of on that same theme, my thought was, because I did about half of them, and then I got confused and had too many questions, and I thought I would going to end up doing it twice, so I should just stop and have this discussion first. But one of the things that that came to mind as I was doing this was there are certain projects on here that I don't think should be on that should be on the list, that we should be rating. The one that comes to mind most obviously is the painting of the clubhouse, the painting of the exterior. The painting of the exterior of the clubhouse, to me, is a regular maintenance issue. This windfall of $250,000, we shouldn't even be considering that, because that should be something on the regular maintenance list, or whatever it's called, the appropriate term in the city, capital improvements, whatever it is. Second, plunge renovation. That one's kind of an interesting one, because I think we kind of all decided that this 250 should not go to plunge renovation. I don't know, maybe I'm fooling myself, but that's another one that I felt odd scoring, because that one would score the highest among them, and so that would put that in the top group. But still, I don't want this windfall to go toward that necessarily, because there's all these other things that we have an opportunity to fix and help. And so again, there's a, that one's too big, right? There's a too big, I have to sort of put too big. Doesn't, shouldn't go on there. The other comment I was going to make. Oh, so as I started to look at my score, so I did about half, and then I went back and looked, and I was also surprised by kind of where they were lying. So one of my possible recommendations, or just thoughts, is maybe the scoring, whatever we end up with the scoring rubric is, we individually, those scores can be our own scores potentially, just a tool that we use individually, and maybe we come forward with individually our A group, B group, and C group, regardless of how the scores came out, because I don't like the way this one fell down to the bottom. I want to put it in group B, and so I don't want my score to unnecessarily influence it down. So that was another thought of mine that I was maybe, depending on the discussion, gonna make. It sounds like you guys maybe had a quasi.
No, you're just reinforcing a part that with everybody saying that these should not be absolute measures, that we should have the flexibility to adjust them. So
maybe the tool is just fine, and we're aware that the newness isn't on there, or that it's on there too much, and so you make your own adjustment for your groups of projects.
It's a guideline, something to start with, and I've talked to Meredith about it. I want to make my own decision, what I think after looking at these, and just let this help me put it into groups, 4 groups or 5 groups, and then number them that way. I think it's a great idea, what you want to do.
My other thought with regard to who's the ultimate decider of things, the two of you kind of are spearheading this with Meredith. So one of my thoughts on that front is that we openly, it's either next meeting or the meeting after, openly discuss our buckets, and the commission as a whole talks it out, and we all decide and kind of get some sort of consensus where those buckets are, and then staff does the same thing on their end, and they have their buckets, and then staff and the two of you meet together to merge those 2 buckets, those 6 buckets.
It's lots of buckets.
Yeah, too many buckets. So that's just some of my thoughts.
And I'm okay with that. My question, one of the questions to that is, do you not want to see staff's recommendations?
I didn't mean to insinuate that. I would love to. Yeah, definitely.
All right. I definitely want to see that when I'm grading or working on this worksheet, I'd like to see their recommendations, how they scored it, and then go from there.
Similar alternative would be, we openly discuss it, we get our buckets. They, in this meeting, show us what they came up with, and then that discussion, rather than just the 2 of you and staff, ends up being staff and us here coming to the consensus. That's another possibility. And I don't know which one would be preferential to you guys. Or
Okay, there's letter.
Lots of things.
Letter-
I know.
letter-
That's a
letter-
lot.
Yeah, you put a lot out there. Any other? Lee, Alex?
I think we all realize that most everything on this list, we'd all like to see it get done. I think prioritizing it is an absolute. A lot of it is part of the larger discussion that we're having with a lot of individual facilities. The Quadex meeting met, and a lot of it's about capital expenditures, where as you initiate a facility, you have to look at the replenishment of funds to see to it that any renewed materials needs to be compensated for. And a lot of this, when we look at the simple painting of Clubhouse, and I mean the first, I think 6 things on this list are Clubhouse, and I put that at the very top of my list. And you know how much I love the plunge, but I put the Clubhouse up there as something that fits a very diverse group and is like one of the pinnacles of Rec Park, which is our, foundation of Recreation Parks Department. So with that, it's hard for me to look at that and say that that's not a number one. I think, what Dave says about the plunge, I think everyone recognizes it as something that needs to be done, but not with the $200,000. So, I think the larger discussion is about our capital expenditures and how we fund a lot of this stuff, and see to it that when we come into something, one of the things that struck me is that we're looking at shade for parks or for playgrounds. I love the idea, but that's something that increases our CapEx budget, because that's something that's going to go 10, maybe 15 years, then needs to be replaced, depending on how it's done and all that. But it's a larger discussion about before we start adding stuff like shade, which is nice. And I think, keeping the kids, and under shade, without shade. And I ran around the beach without any sunscreen for a majority of my life, professionally and personally. So I get it. But on the flip side, I'm not so sure we're ready to start increasing our CapEx budget when we can't meet the current demands of painting a facility that's a mainstay. So, when I look at that painting and I look at, it wasn't done because there's a concern about asbestos, which is now a safety issue, that becomes a beacon of what needs to be done first for health, safety, and aesthetics, not to mention the core of what we should be supporting. So that's me just rambling on. Sorry.
Don't have to be sorry. Alex?
Thank you. With the first 3 questions as well, I didn't know if I would find it somewhere, if it was going to be provided to us. I know it's not an absolute, and I also have some issues with biases going into this and trying to keep my bias out of some of these renovations and what's right and what's wrong. Like the ADA struck me as the ADA restrooms as a necessity, but then where does it really fall in comparison to the things that have to be done? So I welcome a bigger conversation with all of these, and maybe, I don't know, answer them together, so that we're getting all of the information regarding each project.
Okay. Rick?
Okay. Well, you guys are going where I thought you might go many months ago, which is you're seeing the light that this isn't going to give us a strict number and say this is it, right? What I was hoping it would do, in a bigger sense, is it would help us assess better. And I think we got a sense of some of these categories are helping us appreciate the project in a different light and helping compare them one to each other. But being married to what the numerical outcome of it is isn't the total picture. So I looked at the evaluation sheet. Actually, I want to call it kind of an assessment sheet now, because it really is assessing. It's not coming up with a final opinion. Observations I had, I didn't pick up that, is this a maintenance budget? Is this a maintenance project, or is this a capitalization project? Do we separate the two? I don't know if we even have definitions to do that, do we? With the way yeah. So I've been in places where there are separate budgets for each of those activities. 2 of the projects on there one was, well, if I do the project kind of small, I think it was a skate park renovation. If I do it small and strategic, it looks like this. But if I go beyond that and go to the full up renovation, it looks like this. And they're not really separate projects. They're really not stacked against, they're kind of stacked against each other in a total bigger picture. How do we deal with that? Not exactly sure. I don't know that I could write down a rule for that in this list to get there. I do think folks were seeing there's a top, middle, and bottom, because it seemed to resound with you when Dave was talking. I had a couple other categories that I discovered through this process. We have some in there that I would say are just not ready for prime time. Dave, I think you kind of pointed that out too. There was just some missing information that you couldn't get all the way through. I mean, a couple of them even, I think on the budget they were TBD. And then I had a couple I thought just should not be on the list at all, right, for various reasons, which is part of the discussion. So as we come back next time, I'd recommend we add possibly a couple of categories like that. And maybe there's another one that you guys have thought of that maybe I sparked a thought with. But that would help us sort through them a little bit quicker, right? Because if we think there's ones that shouldn't be on the list, maybe we should talk that first. Say, no, I'm not really sure this belongs here. Things that aren't ready. You know, Meredith, I think a couple you would just point out right away saying, yeah, you know, I need to get a little more information for you here. I think we started off with, what, 40 projects? Yeah, and you're able to get 30 of them done and go forward. And I'm sure the other 10 that aren't ready, it's not that nobody's worked on them. There's gathering information and getting them up to a level of understanding and quality you feel comfortable bringing them out here with. And that's to be expected. Again, first time through this, we're going through 30. Hopefully in the future, we're going through 2 or 3. Right? So we'll see that. Let's see. One of the other areas underneath the financial and feasibility, I filled them in, but I was guessing as to whether there's potential savings by combining projects or, and whether I think the first one says potential to produce net revenue taking into account where the programs are in their life cycle. There wasn't that kind of information embedded in this. I'm not sure we need to go off and manufacture the information per se, or is it, maybe it's just a conversation with staff to say, here's where our assessment is relative to it. You know, the items like the strategic plan and the recreation and parks priorities plan. First of all, I don't think in the priorities plan, which is I think I presented to the city council, I don't think we were at that depth. We came with broad generalizations, right? We might want to say we want to improve our aquatics program this year. Our focus should be on the clubhouse, and that would help give it a check up with that. Yeah. So those are a couple of other areas I kind of struggle with data for, and not sure if I wanted it independent or if I wanted it just hearing as a group first time with everybody else with the staff's opinion. Dave, you look like
I was just going to say that it sounds like we all kind of feel that there are at least one or more that we don't think should be in one of the buckets yet. So maybe we create a fourth category. But one of those projects, once it's ready, could be at the top, or potentially it could be anywhere on the spectrum. So maybe our fourth grouping is projects that we're not ready to categorize yet and aren't ready for action this year. It's kind of a combination, right? They're not. Yeah. There's not enough information or not ready for action, and so we really can't consider spending this money on it anyway, because it would take a year or two. You know, like in the case of the trail, I can imagine that would take, you know, multi-agency type of, you know, not our land, whose land, all those types of things could take years to actually put in. So that would be one that I would think would fall into that fourth category potentially. But anyway, to have a fourth category might help the situation, and then it could also narrow down the 30 down to, you know, 20 potentially.
Yeah, that we're carrying. Yep. And we have a number in the hopper being worked. Yep, I'm with you. Noting that down too. I think that's all that I really had for that then.
What do you think, Meredith?
Well, a couple things. On the last page of the project listing, you will see the removed from list. And some of those were identified as more suitable for citywide CIP process. I do definitely see the exterior painting of the clubhouse as more of a maintenance versus a capital improvement that the the designated funds that we're working with should be used for. So I'd like to maybe further that conversation of if there's anything on the list that at this point we can have a conversation tonight to drop off to sort of to reduce the number of projects. That's one thing we can do tonight. Regarding the plunge and seeing the costs, just keep in mind that those are really shot in the dark costs. A lot of them are. And initially our conversations kind of went back and forth, but the way that I see it is that the cost of it shouldn't necessarily impact your ranking, because I think, if the plunge does end up to be number 1 or number 2 or number 3, I think that's very good information for the city council. If a funding source were to become available, then it's already been identified as a high priority. So I want to keep that in mind also.
Just my one little fear in that situation is that it ends up being on the top, and they say, wow, the commission really thinks this is the top priority. Let's put that 250 towards the plunge. And we go, ah!
Right.
So I just want to avoid that potential.
Sure. So we'll have to really structure our recommendation in such a way that, this is a high priority, but our recommendation for these specific funds are these 2, 3, 4 projects.
And as far as the cost, you say they're shot in the dark, but they might also be accurate.
Sure.
And the other thing is, when I was going personally, it was I wasn't really considering cost, but it was like, maybe I shouldn't say I wasn't considering it at all. It was like a minor consideration. It was like peek at it, see if it made sense. Is it, if it's a 5, if it's really, really low or really, really high, then it impacted my decision a little bit. If everything in the middle kind of lumped together as far as my scoring. I don't know if you guys did the same thing.
And one last thing, comment is the Lakes Task Force is also working on, or one of their top priorities is to put out a community survey. That community survey is to assess parks and recreation facility needs that are maybe unmet in the community. This is in relation to the lakes property. However, we structured the survey that lists basically all of these projects, so that will become then sort of a double duty survey that we can apply to this process as well.
When do you expect those results to be done?
Well, the survey will be going out this week, but most likely tomorrow. And, probably 2-3 weeks, we'll have a good amount of responses back.
So by our next meeting, we'll have information.
Right.
And that will be that third question in the strategic planning. That will be the most recent community survey we'll use, rather than the one from however many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, was it?
Right, because this one will actually lists
all of
these specific
things.
Projects.
Okay. Do we want to go down the list 1 through 30 and
see what we want to remove?
And then we'll see if we can come to an agreement on that.
Yeah, would we need
You want to try it?
Does it need to be unanimous to take it off?
I don't want to. I'll say I don't know that I want to go through all 30. I don't think the ones in the middle, are going to kind of live. We're going to debate and toss them back and forth. I'm thinking, is there anything at the top we think we might need to do now? Anything at the bottom that we think we should remove? And maybe then are the things that we still think that need a little bit more work before they're truly ready for the list.
We might not like some of the ones that we want to remove.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
I mean, right now, if we're sitting here and we can say that that's things we think we can remove. I know I'm in that position. I've got a couple that I can throw under the bus right now, just to say, yeah, I just don't think it's there. But I have other ideas on how to do some of them. But I don't think this is the list.
If
you want me to walk the plank, I will.
No, I don't mind walking it. What do you think, Dave? Lee? Do you want to go down a list? Is there something that you have that you think everybody's going to want to pull out?
Not necessarily. One of my comments was when we actually look at the money, and the money was important to me because when we look at somebody giving us a presentation about, the paddleball tennis, I'm like, well, are there people lining up for it? And with that being said, for $5,000, it's a very small percentage of the 200. If we could make a large group, I don't know that there's people lining up for a second court. I find it hard to imagine that they are, but I don't sit there and really watch the attendance at the paddle tennis court. So if you as staff are going to tell me that there's a high demand for a second paddle tennis for $5,000 to $7,000, I think that is a great expenditure if there are people lining up and we're going to make a difference. On the flip side, I mean, you could take the plunge right out of it because that $200,000 is not going to do a lot for it. And the Aquatics Committee is, I think, more versed in trying to address that as we move through the progression of, getting an overall feel for what aquatics should be doing, in a linear fashion. So that's kind of...
You got something to say over there, I think.
No, I just liked Meredith's comment about that, it might be informative for the council if the plunge does, I like that concept, but at the same time, it's also informative if they hear from us that, no, don't, that's your responsibility. That's kind of what we're saying by not putting it on the list. So it might be sending the same priority message, but
I think we say the same thing by saying it is a high priority, but it's inappropriate for this list in this allocation of resources. At least that's our recommendation, that you should not use this $250 for that. We can get better mileage elsewhere.
I'm having a hard time looking at a lot of these projects when I'm looking at the George E. Gordon Clubhouse that's falling apart.
Yep.
Okay? All you need to do is walk through that place, and it should be at the top of all these lists.
Hey, don't try to unduly influence my rankings.
All you need to do is walk.
Yep. Well, I will say that in my rankings, I would elevate it as well. That it's an underpinning to Rec and Parks. It should be higher on our list. Should all of the project be there? I don't know. Maybe some of the split up has some sense. But then if you're going to do it, maybe do it once and do it right, or do it complete. Right? Make it one single job. Get in, get out, get done with it. So I don't know that I'm ready to have that conversation tonight.
Yeah, I know,
but the generality of saying it's high on my list, it weighs up there. It floats to the top.
I guess what Meredith wants, or staff wants, and correct me, you want to see some of these removed tonight?
I think if there's a way to make the list more manageable and there's something obvious, I mean, I tend to agree with Dave's comment about exterior painting. So if it's just, the one, and that's what I was trying to sort of decipher as I went through the list more in detail too, and really thought about the projects is this more appropriate for CIP, for city council, for maintenance, and so if there's anything that's just glaring like that.
Number 11 is glaring.
What's number 11?
Skate park.
Skate park.
Renovation.
Yeah, that seems to be a fairly large capital investment.
That's not glaring to me to be removed. It may end up scoring low for me, but you think the council should treat that the same way they are the plunge, is what you're saying? As far as that should not be the responsibility of...
Yeah, the question on that is where's the threshold and dollar amount that it should hit?
I do.
And I'm kind of leaning that way too, although I think it's probably near the bottom of that amount. But if 250 is the budget, I mean, we can't get it done all on our own with it sitting here looking at it in the 340.
What about the informative part to the council? Shouldn't we leave it on just because I'm not saying it's going to be low on mine, but it sounds like it is on your two. Shouldn't the council know that rather than removing it and saying this is on you, shouldn't they know that that's the opinion of this group, that it is a very low priority?
If it's, okay, now I'm going to ask the question that, if it's not on the list, it's not a priority, right? And they'll know that it's not a priority by not being on the list.
Correct. But I would still, if I'm giving them a list,
I'm just saying what you're saying and just reversing it.
I'd give them the list, and I would say...
Confusing.
I would say the plunge and the skate park are two projects we have identified that are larger than the budget you have. And my opinion, Rick Pierce's, is the plunge is one you should look at longer term to say, how can we make this project happen? The skate park renovation as a full-up project doesn't serve the entire community the way some of these other projects do. And it should be a lower priority, but it's still worthy of you being aware that it's there. But,
it could be kept.
It could be kept.
It could be category 4 or 5 if that's the way you want. If we want to go into adding a different additional categories.
Do either of you? How do you guys feel about the skate park being on or off our list to rank?
as an ex-skater.
It's okay.
So let me preface that. I love the idea
Once
of
a skater, always a skater.
I also look at every other project, and I look at the first 6 projects as absolute priorities over the skate park. So,
so rank it as such.
Yeah, I see it as a low ranking, but I know that there is a very specific group that's fairly large in the town of, you know, kids that do use it, that represent parents and homeowners that
absolutely
that make it something. To remove it, I think, would be a shame, but it's going to rank down there, and it's unfortunate for them. But there's so many priorities in this town with limited funds that 200 is not going anywhere for that park. I'd like to see, you know, more people come in with support. When we talk about support, you know, we're looking at aquatics, and there's already the potential for outside funding to help assist us with the plunge. So that I think it's a high priority, but I'm not so sure that we're willing to throw funds at it immediately until we, you know, have the aquatics committee sit down and analyze it, and that comes with a lot of other variables. So that, yes, I like the skate park, but I see it as a tough one to put beyond like our lower set.
And that's the thing, it's living in a list with other things. If
Right.
it wasn't living in a list with some of these other things we have, it would bubble up and it'd be easier to say, yeah. But right now, with what we're faced with, it's not up there for me. But let me go on one I would say I want to just mark off the
I want
list.
to hear what Alex has to say,
go
but
ahead, sorry.
I don't skate. My son doesn't skate, but I'll tell you what, there's always somebody skating there. So it's being used. So it really hurts me to take anything off this list. But again, I would approach it the same manner as with the plunge. It just doesn't make sense to put, you know, grab that money, put it into there, and then we're still short. So I when we categorize it, for me, the skate park would be low, but I would like to see it in a way where it's still highlighted on the side that if, you know, say somebody donated $5 million, that we would use it towards that.
okay, thank you.
For me, I would take only 2 off the list: the painting and the plunge. If I had my druthers,
The painting and
the painting of the clubhouse and the plunge would be the 2 that I would take off, and I would leave everything else on. But if you guys want to take more off, that's fine.
Well, and that goes to philosophy. I think painting of the clubhouse is a highest priority because it should be done not necessarily out of this budget, though. I would say it's an extremely high priority, but I believe that should be done, you know, as just general maintenance. The plunge has a whole lot of other issues, and you know, I'm the first one to support the plunge, but I can't say that it's coming before a whole lot of things because there's a lot to consider with something as big as that. And do I want it to be a high priority? Yes. Is it something that we should be addressing right now? No. I think the clubhouse is probably, in my mind, one of the number one things out there that needs to be done as a complete project with a quality installation, not, you know, when I look at this 1 through 6, you know, well, we could kind of piece this together. No, I don't want to see that clubhouse piece together. This is something that's been standing since I was a kid, and it should be done and done right, in my opinion. And so, you know, like I say, when we're talking about taking something off the list, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a low priority. It just means that it should be addressed at some other level, maybe.
It's really sounding like we want to leave everything on the list and let staff come back with their scores.
I'm okay with that too.
I knew you would be, because that's where it's all going. So that's my recommendation: is that we get this back and be prepared to sit down and get something done at the very next meeting. And yes, it's not going to be, might not be pretty. Somebody's not going to be happy. And there'll be groups that won't be happy, but we've got to do something. This, sitting here and not doing it is bothering me. We need to do it. So if the answer is you want staff to come back, or I want staff to come back with a score, and any recommendations, hey, we think, I'm good with that. And if we can get that before 5 days before our meeting, that would be helpful. I know it's putting a lot on you, and you've had a very busy 2 years, And thank you for that, by the way, staff.
What are you recommending that we, individual commissioners, bring back at the next meeting? I want to say also thank you for the descriptions. I think I'm sure it was a group effort, but they were awesome. They were really good descriptions. I learned a lot just from the paragraph or two that was in there. It was really well done.
Go ahead. What
was my question, though?
Your question was, what do you
expect? What do you want as individual commissioners for us to bring back at the next meeting?
Your
buckets?
You want to categorize things? Group one as, yeah, I think this is the number one project that should be done, or number two, number three. And this next group is, this is what I'd like to see happen. And number three, whatever you want it to be. And number four is, hey, not in the next 5 years.
So almost as if we are individually working as, like, they're going to bring back their recommendation. We as individuals are also going to bring back a recommendation, which is our top group, really.
Right. Because I think
and be prepared on each one to, I guess, if you want to say, we got to have a majority vote on each project and see where it ends up, or come up with something so we have an answer.
Well, I'm hoping that in the top A group, that we
might-
have 4 or 5 projects that are common amongst us, and so they just are there. And then we've got ones that differ, and we fight for them to be in the list or not in the list, and then we move on to the B group. And
what do you think? I mean, I don't know where else you can go.
If Meredith is okay with what you are recommending, then I think it sounds great. Are you okay with that?
Yes, I am okay with that. So just to be clear, the high, medium, low buckets, are we talking top third, middle third, bottom third, or kind of draw the line where we feel it should be?
For me, my top bucket would be what to do. Like, I would try to draw it. I know the money isn't precise, but I would try to have my top group be what could be accomplished with that 250. That would be and that might be a third. It might only be a quarter of them. That's what I would think. And then B would be, if it happens again next year, then we'd move on to that group.
But you could have one that's going to cause it to go over budget and say, and that's telling the council, hey, we really want this, or believe this needs to be done, but it's not going to be done with this 200,000.
Right. And but I think that when city council kicked this to us, I think they want to know what we recommend for this chunk of money. That's the ultimate goal, right? The immediate goal, right? So that should be our top priority in our rankings when we come in.
Sure.
Okay. Think?
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck, staff. So we alternatively discussed, and we're taking other action on this one, right?
Good summary.
Okay, that was number 2. So we're number 2 now. Consideration. You know what? I think we have to make a motion for you to bring that back, right? No? Okay. Number 2, consideration and possible action related to reviewing current rules and policies at campus El Segundo athletic fields. Recommendations are provide direction to staff if there is a desire to revise rules and policies, and or alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith.
Yes, thank you very much. So this item is also an unfinished business item. We did discuss at the last meeting the signage that has been placed out at Campus El Segundo. And so Ericia and Sean will both update you on the signage. And then we wanted to have further discussion about, really in relation to something that Roger Steele had brought up in public communications, but some of the feedback that we've received from our Youth Sports Council members on during the reservation activities, sort of some of the issues that have come about now that the facility is 10 years old. We have a really solid operations plan out there. I mean, we can predict for the most part, day-to-day operations, and Sean and his staff are out there on a daily basis. And so it's time to really review our policies out there and see what's working and see what's not and make the appropriate adjustments. So Ericia and Sean will take it from here.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. I just wanted to start out by saying that thank you, Roger, for coming in this evening and addressing some of the concerns. It was kind of right on time for us this evening. We did meet with the Youth Sports Council on November 8th, and there were some concerns, and I'm just going to recap. I know that last meeting I was absent, and I believe you went through this as well. Some of our concerns were that the field, of course, is an investment, and we want to take care of the field. So we want to make sure that people are following the rules. So out at El Segundo, we could see that the signage was a little wordy, so maybe people weren't reading the signs correctly, and the rules just weren't being followed at all. So we wanted to make sure we cleared that up. Also, reserve time and drop-in time does not seem to be meshing well together. It's actually creating chaos. There is concerns for safety. Adults are out there, they're dropping in. We have children out in the facility, so then you have some adults that aren't affiliated with certain groups that are reserving the time, and you have strangers with children out at the facility, so that's a concern as well. Possible confrontations with the staff, coaches, and adults that just aren't following the rules if they're having drop-in time, so that's a concern. Then drop-in Monday through Friday 10 to 2 is also a time slot that's being thrown up in the air. Is this a good time frame? Does it work for the city? Is this something that is working for staff? I know that right now it seems that residents using that time frame, it's really a low number of residents using that time frame compared to non-residents. So we see that between January and July, we had 27 residents over that 7-month period. So we really want to ask the question, is this working, or can we make it work for us? So Sean and I got together, and thank you, Sean. Sean did a very good job with coming up with some ideas, and he's going to present some options, and we're really looking to the commissioners tonight to help us make some decisions and what options would work for the field so that we can have a better time of organizing the sports that are out there and people that would like to use the field for drop-in use. So here we go. Ready?
Good evening, commissioners. How are we doing tonight? So we've met a couple times, and Aracy and I have met just recently to discuss some of these things. So for me, I came up with some options for us tonight, and if it's option 1 or 2, or if it's a combination, maybe we can kind of get to what we'd like to do at Campus El Segundo, what we'd like to see for my staff and I to kind of follow through with procedures that we're having moving forward out at Campus El Segundo. So this was the major sign that we put out at Campus El Segundo. It is located, I believe, about 6 places right when you first walk in the front door on the building in 4 locations. So it is really somewhere where my staff can kind of turn around and point and say, these are the things you guys need to be following if somebody really wants to go down that road and we need to point at a sign. You know, these rules were in place before, but these are the major ones. The not allowed, the food, the drinking, all those different things on the field, open flame, fireworks, all those different things, golfing, pets, a lot of self-explanatory ones, but I wanted to make sure we put those in there. The rule part, 9 or less, you need to have a permit. That's been in place since the inception of the Campus El Segundo. And then I think a big one is play is not allowed at any time at out-of-bounds areas. I think Roger kind of had brought up those are some of the things that we've had some issues with when we have AYSO, when we have our youth groups, when we have reservations. Frankly, people are kind of impeding and coming out there. No food and drink allowed. Clean up, remove trash, and then water. So those are kind of the rules that we have up there for the staff to kind of point to. So those are kind of the rules we have on the sign there. These are some of the other signs that we kind of made sandwich boards. They're very big. I was out there yesterday or the day before with the staff moving them around a little bit to see where they make sense. You have to trip over them to go through the facility. So if you're not seeing them, I don't know what to tell you, Mr. Lubes. I promise they're standing there because you're the guy I'm always worried about. But you can kind of see no food and drinks allowed on the turf. They're right on the sidelines. Parents are tripping over them, the adults that are coming there, the kids, everybody. On the top middle there, those are some of the ones that are on the perimeter of the facility. So it's kind of on the east and west side of the fences, on the black fences on both sides. No food, the drinks, no gum, all the things that we've been talking about. The one on the right, no metal cleats, no gum, no sunflower seeds. Again, right on the sidelines. You can't miss it unless you take it and throw it away. So it's out there. Everyone's going to be able to see it. These are on both fields. And then I think the one in the middle is important for us. A little wordy, but basically that section between, it's on the Mariposa side, the south side of the field, where we have a little bit of that, you know, for AYSO, where kind of teams warm up before the game. It is a perfect place for people to go and take advantage of a spot to kick a ball, to throw, to train, to do whatever they're doing. That is on both sides of that area, in that little area that's kind of as big as this here. So people know these are the rules. The staff has been instructed if they're out there, they can't be there during those times.
Including teams warming up for the next game.
That's kind of a conversation that we'd like to have about, because for me, we've had a meeting prior to this. These are the black and white things that I need to go to my staff and say, sorry, AYSO, Mr. Lubes, you guys can't warm up there, or is that something we're okay with? So those are the types of things that we're looking for tonight, to kind of see the letter of the law versus some spirit of the law things that we can kind of say, hey, it's AYSO, they're warming up before the game, the next game. So those are the types of things that we're looking for. But that's out there right now. So until we get these conversations going this evening. So as Aricia kind of said, the overall field usage conversation, what do we want to accomplish? What do we want to do? So one of the options that I came up with, and myself and Aricia came up with Meredith as well, facility use is only in use when reserved. It is not reserved when the field is closed. So we have other fields in town where the gate is locked and no one's allowed to use it. The softball field. Brett Field's a little bit different because there's no fence for us to lock, but that's in theory the way we run that. The lights get turned off. If you drive by right now, AYSO is done, the lights are off. Stevenson Field's another example. Richmond Field, again with the fencing kind of situation, but that is an option for us. I like the word facility because it was easy to kind of define for us. So that is an option for us. If it's not reserved by AYSO, or Dave Lubes is a reserve group that's adult group at night for soccer, the field's closed. We don't have any ability to drop in. That's kind of where we at for the overall field usage. Option number one. And then another option that we came up with is facility is closed to the public when it is reserved. So AYSO is out there, and I keep saying AYSO. We have flag football, we have baseball, we have there's a lot of youth groups. We have 10 youth groups in our youth sports council. It's not just AYSO. He's here tonight, so it was a good example to use. But when these guys are out there using the field is locked down. No one's allowed to be there using the field while AYSO is out there, while flag football is out there, while lacrosse is out there. Facility will have specified days and times for drop-in hours. So the way I've looked at it and we've discussed is it's very similar to the pool for those situations. On Thursday at 3 o'clock, you can come and do the drop-in, just like we have 10 to 2 Monday through Friday right now. And I can kind of give you some of those ideas. Drop-in hours will be posted, so we'll make it very big. And when you walk in and you're a non-user of the facility and you're trying to drop in, you know it's drop-in time or you don't know it's drop-in time. So that's kind of another option. I've proposed sometimes, and I went through it with my staff just because, someone like Tyler that I work with closely every day, me and him have worked with the facility a lot, and we've worked with the calendar. Year-round, Sunday nights is a very notorious slow time for us. It's a great opportunity for us if we want to go down this road with option number 2. We have 2 hours where we can set this up. We can have a staff there. We can have you pay with a Rec Park ID card. You're a non-resident, pay with the non-resident rate. You're a child, whatever it is that we have set up right now. Some of the other times that I put together, and there will be some impact to some of our youth groups for this, but this is part of the conversation. Winter and spring and fall, I felt like Monday nights has been kind of a slower time for us. I know some of these groups would have to kind of squeeze in. During the spring, it's very busy with lacrosse and flag football. During the fall, AYSO would definitely be a little impacted by this, but I think we can move that around. But I was trying to get something that people knew the date and they knew the time. It's Mondays, it's 8 to 9 o'clock. This is the time to come. During the summer, we have a little bit of a different experience because a lot of our youth groups go away, so we go to a lot more reserve time. Club soccer group kind of comes up, adult men's soccer, flag football leagues. We have a lot of those different things, so we can offer a little bit more. And again, I put Monday, Wednesday, Friday as an idea, and I tried to go after work so that people could kind of take a look and they could come after work and they could come during a time that might work for them. So those are kind of some proposed times. We can move those around, but that was kind of the times that I thought would make some sense. So those are the overall field usages. And then moving to the next part is our Monday through Friday. So if you guys are aware of or not aware of, Monday through Friday, we have 2 staff members out there. We have a staff sit at the front and collect money as people come in, as patrons come in. And then we have another staff roaming the facility, cleaning up trash, making sure people are following our rules. So for option number 1, facility will remain closed Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, except during existing. So we would close it down, and it would be kind of similar to the high school where it's just like the PE classes. It's just not something we would use. And then the other thing we could do with that is, as Aracia and I were kind of discussing the other day, is figure out what we can do. Go to these businesses around town, like Scott was saying, go to the hotels and say, hey, we have this opportunity. You have a team coming to play. Let's reserve it. These are the things we could do: team building, group exercises, all those different things. So eliminating that 10 to 2 that we're currently doing. You guys can kind of see the times and how much it's being used currently. So that's option number 1. And then the other option Aracia and I came up with is continue offering that same time. Again, market so we can get some more people out there, because clearly that's something that we need to kind of get growing if we want to do this. And then another thing that, Aracia and I discussed was maybe we don't do Monday through Friday. Maybe we do in a shorter time. Maybe we do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever that shakes out to be. Right now, currently, just as an example, like right now, Fridays, we have like half of DirecTV seems to come down and they all pay $5 or whatever, resident, non-resident, whatever it is. And we probably have 25 to 50 guys and girls come out every Friday for a couple hours, and it's a really big number. Other days throughout the week, it's a little slower. So those are the 2 options for the Monday through Friday, 10 to 2. And so that was another one we wanted to share with you guys. So that's kind of the overall, kind of Aracia gave you the numbers and some of the stuff, the recap, and then I was able to kind of give you some of the options. That's what staff and I have come up with. And then if we have any questions, we're here to answer. Well, you guys got input, anything?
I like the idea of predictable times for drop-in. I think that'll channel your flow with everybody. As far as the signs, they're seeing the signs and then there's respecting the signs. They're not necessarily the same thing. And I know we just had a little confrontation last week that we didn't like. One of the things that jumped into my mind about that was the person already gained access to the area that we didn't want them to be in. They were in the front door. They were in the middle of the property. And then we had a confrontation about, please leave. We did a nice gesture, let them use the restroom, and had that incident. Thought in my head is, looks like you're still shying away from parking somebody near the front of saying you're okay to be in the facility. Is that a right understanding of my part?
Are you talking about outside of the 10 to 2 time?
I'm talking about with the reservations or with even the drop-in time frame. I mean, when there's a reservation by a youth group, right? You don't know who exactly does or doesn't belong. There are some indicators. I mean, if a bunch of 6'4" guys come walking in, a little older, mid-20s, they're probably not with the girls U12 team that's got the field reservation, right? So there are some ways that you can sort of filter folks that may not belong because they're just not with the appropriate group, right? So I know we talked about that in the Youth Sports Council about the trickiness of that, and you were going to think about it. And it's kind of a follow-up question. That is, where do you sit on that today?
For me, it's how do I, with my staff, how do I accomplish that?
Yeah.
And so for me, I gave the example, Drew Boyles walks in and I walk in. Who's the guy that's causing the trouble and who's not? You know, so it's hard. yes, I understand the guy with 15 soccer balls on
I
his
gotcha.
shoulder that has the cleats on. So for me, with putting someone there, I don't know exactly how.
I can understand.
You know,
Actually,
yeah.
you hadn't figured anything new since the
No,
last time we talked. That's
no,
okay.
yeah.
That's why I just want to
Yeah.
gain understanding of that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Drop-in times. Are we, drop-in just means you can drop in and play. There's no fee. You don't have to show ID card or anything. Is that correct?
No, so we would set up from one of those options. We would set it up like the 10 to 2 time, Monday through Friday. So it would be a staff at the front, a staff inside, and they would be collecting fees, rec park ID cards, kids, whatever we have set up, $1, $2, $5 right now. So that's how we would set up that 8 to 9 Monday nights. That's how we do it.
And if you have the fields reserved, AYSO or lacrosse has the field, no one else is coming in that gate. And how are we going to, how is staff going to decipher between who's walking? It's a dad or a brother bringing their 12-year-old for AYSO. How is that going to happen? Is that something that we want to put on staff, or do we want to go a different way?
I hear you. It's along the same lines. So one of my kids has practice, and I come down with my other kid, and the two of us go over here, and we're playing on the side. And so the people at the gate are saying, "Wait, what about those two right there?" Right? And that's the same problem. I mean, that's one of the lists of problems with. My other question, or a question of mine, is what happens at the beginning? You said if 9 or more, you need to reserve. So does that mean that if staff sees 8 people out there playing and like the whole field's reserved by AYSO, but at 4 o'clock, there's only one team that's practicing and then at 5 o'clock, 4 teams come. But at 4 o'clock, there's only one team using half the field. Right now, if I bring 8 people on, can I use the other half?
That is where we currently are. And I think that's what we're getting away from. I think once, again, AYSO, flag football, lacrosse, anybody with our youth sports council, if they're on the field reservation, they have the whole field. So it would be one field versus the other field. But as of right now, yes, if they were on the half field, 8 people could go on the other side and play a game of 4-on-4.
You considered reserving by half field instead of by whole field?
We do currently do half field. We even do a quarter field at points if I need to. I mean, we do half field all the time with our adult groups, typically like smaller groups. So we do that right now. But that's the conversation we're having is me and you go kick the ball and we go run into somebody that's 7 years old on the AYSO side of the field. That's kind of where we're at right now and trying to kind of alleviate that issue and kind of get them.
What's the downside to moving to all reservation?
You would be eliminating drop-in time for people to come play soccer on a recreation field.
Is there a way maybe to educate them to go? I've seen a lot of people set up soccer at maybe Constitution Park. Is there a way to kind of steer them over that way? The drop-ins?
We're not trying to encourage them to do that. That's something we're not trying to encourage. That's more of a headache somewhere else. That's pushing them to the residents that call me and say, why are there people out there blowing whistles? And so it's just, I agree with what you're saying. There's other places we can work on pushing them. But that would be the downfall if we went only reservation. And there's lots of other places that do that. You'd eliminate drop-in time for people to come play soccer or football or whatever, train or whatever you want to do. That would be the opposite side of that.
Yeah, but I think back to when I was a kid and the YMCA had a drop-in time between 8 and 9. I knew I could run down there, go in, have a pickup game of basketball, and do whatever we wanted. And so we kind of were trained that way to think about the use that way. And if folks are used to, like the DirecTV guys, if you didn't have the drop-in time for them, they'd call you up for a reservation if they knew that was an access and an ability. So I think those tools are strong applied in the right way. I don't know what the exact right way is. I like the flexibility that you are putting into. And I think that's the direction to go, is just to play with that, to get predictability. Because the predictability in hours will set people's behaviors up and it'll be repeatable.
Go back to option 2. Keep going. Right there. Seeing those drop-in times. by looking at it that way, the field is closed to the public when it's reserved, closed to the public. And those drop-in times that you've proposed, the proposed drop-in times, what do you guys think about that? It's not totally shutting that facility down, but it's leaving it. There is some time to use it every week. I'm just looking at it again, and it might slow the problems that are happening with AYSO.
How much, if DirecTV calls up for a reservation, how much do they have to pay?
It depends on resident versus non-resident. So residents, $55 an hour for a field, and then if non-residents, $165 an hour. A business in town, so like DirecTV typically falls into this, their business, so they're $110 an hour.
But they could also rent a half field if that's all they needed.
And you said they have 25 out there? Is that your number that you use? 25 times $5 a person? About?
Roughly, yeah. That's on Fridays.
So that's
the same dollar figure. It's the same dollar figure.
At what point is it appropriate for us to ask staff if there is a recommendation, or is it really just wide open in your there? I mean, if you had to decide right now on your own, put you on the spot, like which one of these do you think you have the most experience out there?
You might get 2 or 3 different opinions.
Okay. Like I said, maybe it's not appropriate for me to ask.
Either one for us, me going out there and executing the game plan, either one can be worked. For me, it's what's the philosophy? Do we want to close it down because we close down a lot of fields that we have in town? Or do we want to go with a little bit more flexibility? This will make it much easier on my staff when Roger calls me and says, hey, there's an issue and this and all the things. And again, I'm just using as an example, but this will give me an opportunity to go to staff and we can kind of make a game plan, because there are some gray areas, and this will kind of make it a very black and white. It's just where do we want to go philosophy-wise?
I agree with you. But I'm looking at this one, and this is only me personally. This is a starting point here, and we can always drop the proposed drop-in times if it doesn't change. We can just say bring it back in 6 months, because that'll be the end June. Bring it back. Hey, and Roger, come back in June and let us know. Did it change at all? Did it help a little? Did it? No, it fixed it. That's the only way we can do it. What do you think, Sean?
For me, I think the other thing that Rick kind of touched on that I think is something that Araceli and I have talked a lot about, and Meredith a little bit as well when we've talked, is we've just got to re-educate people that are coming. When you walk to the front door and my staff is saying, sorry guys, tonight it's not until 8 o'clock, and they come at 4 o'clock, come back in 4 hours or don't come. I mean, it's just the place to go. Right now, there's none of that conversation going on. So now it's 8 o'clock on Mondays. They line up at 7:55 to start going at 8 o'clock. It's just the thing that Brian, and I've said it before, was the pool situation with the drop-in. It's the same. To me, it feels very similar to the pool. When I was at the pool, Dave's kids get out of the pool from swim lessons, and then the next group of Dave's group come in for drop-in. It's very simple, so it makes it very clean. And like you said, in 6 months, we can take a look. The times can change. We can be flexible. We can work with AYS. So if that's not going to work for them, we can change the times. I just think for everybody, this is going to make the most sense. There's going to be some impact somewhere, but I think then it'll make it very easy when the staff is getting a question, say, sir, come back at 8 o'clock. It's all yours. You guys can go play whatever games and stuff. So
have your ID card or your money and get it done.
One little difference between this and the plunge is, since you like to use me as an example, the difference between one of my kids and me kicking on the side because my kid's practicing versus the football coach probably getting paid by these 4 kids making money off, using our facility to make money, or is your staff, and this is the difficult part. Yeah, Dave, you can stay over there, but you 4 have to go. That's the subjectivity that still exists, right? You're not going to get rid of that problem, I guess.
It's the same guy that says these are all my 4 nephews. It's this. I mean, I've heard the tennis courts. I mean, we go through this all the time, but this will get us further down the road where I can eliminate some of those conversations.
Fix everything, but
but we can come back and try to fix it the rest of the way if we need to.
I think one thing too that I'll mention is that, given the numbers during the drop-in times, they're the same recurring patrons. And so I don't think there are thousands of people that we need to educate. I think there's probably 100 people that really come on a frequent basis that they're dealing with on a recurring basis. So I think once that core group of drop-in players understands the new policies, then hopefully they'll stop trying to show up at 5 or 6 p.m. when they know that it's not going to be.
Meredith, I will validate exactly what you said. I haven't been a soccer coach out there for a number of years back. That was it. It was the same type of faces coming in, just wanting to play, seeing an open space, doing their best, but a ball gets loose or they get a little upped in the energy and they forget where they're at and they run in. And it just causes problems for teams that are out there. And going back, we're talking soccer because experience-based, but I've seen that happen with the football guys that are out there as well. Lacrosse, I'm sure, has some level of concern with that, but people don't tend to run into a place where there's this hard ball that could get out of control and come flying at you. So
I assume that option 2 also means that 10 to 2 goes away. No.
That's a separate issue.
Okay.
So we would have to, again, if you would feel that way, we need to know if we have this schedule, you would want 10 to 2. Or you think 10 to 2 should go, or should we make other arrangements for that 10 to 2 time slot?
I thought we would break it into 2.
Okay.
And this is from 2 to 10 or whatever, and then the 10 to 2 being a separate.
Yeah, I think the best way to represent is this is a sweet spot of reservations that we have with youth groups, right?
And this is how I feel right here. I'm not sure where we're going here with the rest of the commission, but I'd like to go down the list here. What do you think? Or do you have a different idea? I'll start with Dave and work our way through so everybody gets a chance to say something here.
I will say that in general, I like this option. I'm not sure. I don't know about the times, if it's 8 or 9 o'clock, how you made those differentiations between Mondays in the spring, winter, and fall go to 9, but in the summer only goes to 8. I know you said you could be flexible and these aren't set, but so I don't think I'm not comfortable recommending these specific hours because it would have to go more to just as a general.
I don't think we want to approve hours personally.
Right. I think that's staff's decision, and we should let staff make that decision on. They'll know when they're not. First of all, if the field is reserved, if the facility is reserved, it's closed. No one else is going to get on there. It's not supposed to get on there. As far as the drop-in times, if staff wants them to be 6 to 9 year-round on Sundays.
Just curiously, what's your thought on? Okay, so 2 half fields are reserved from 4 to 6. Does that mean that the other 2 halves are closed because the 2 halves are reserved?
If the facility, yes. So if the facility,
if part of a facility. So I mean, I know you're going to say I'm getting in the weeds, but I can't help myself.
No, it's a great question. Please keep going.
A whole field's reserved, the other field is not. Is the whole facility now closed because one field's reserved?
Well, I think if you look at these,
no, I'm just asking.
Okay,
if you look at these hours, I mean, there are going to be weeks in the winter where Mondays from 4 to 8 don't have reservations, but we're not just going to open it up for drop-in. Yeah. So we'll have these set times, and those are the set times. So it really eliminates that daily.
They're not reserved, changes. So it's locked.
Right.
Right.
And it'd be unlikely that one field is. My scenarios are.
Those come up though.
They do.
Believe me, I've asked these 2 the same questions. I agree because it happens all the time. And what I what I would like to do is take you two halves and put you on this field so the other field's open. But there's plenty of times where AYSO has half the field. I got people on the other. That's very clear now with the way we want to set it up.
Yep.
You guys can come back at 8 o'clock on Monday night, and you guys, that's the night to be here.
Right, drop-ins are drop-ins, period. That's the core
Yeah.
And
of
the
what we're putting in place here, yeah.
And the re-education is also going to be difficult because I just see people seeing, like looking out at that field saying, what do you mean? There's nobody on it.
Right,
Mr.
pop a
Green.
reservation.
Yeah, I guess you say
can-
yes.
you can
could
reserve the
reserve it.
field.
It's reservable.
Or you-
Next week, it's open at this time.
Yep, exactly.
So I'll start then and finally finish.
Wait, when did you? This is your starting?
I agree. I like option 2, and leaving the specific times more open to staff to figure out how those Mondays and things go. Yeah. Sorry. No, it's all good.
Sorry about that, Dave. Okay, now that there's a break. First of all, when you start to look at the CES drop-in rates, it cost us $6,300 and we're collecting $46.
Wait, we're not on that yet.
This is all part
I
of
wasn't allowed
drop-in
to talk
price.
about that.
Oh, jeez. There's no parameters for you. Anyway, if I could just real quickly. We need to streamline. That's apparent. I like the idea of streamlining. Your hours are recommended. That's great. I think the biggest key to this is consistency, because once you set those hours for drop-in, they know they could come in. They're not going to come in an hour before if they're not certain. When we do reserve it and it breaks these times, that's when I think you're going to have a tough time trying to tell them, okay, well, there's only this part is for drop-in on this particular night. So that try to keep as consistent as you can so there's no, break in service. It's at the plunge, if we're going to use that analogy, it's yes, swim team comes in at 6 p.m. and everyone's getting out of lessons at 5:45. And everyone understands that that's the break off. It gives a little time to clear the field so that you can see who belongs where. And I love option 2. I just believe that consistency is going to be your key, especially with these repetitive drop-ins. They will get used to whether they could drop in at 8 or 4. And if it's not worth it for them to come at 4, that's fine. They'll figure out how to get there at 8, or they'll find another field that's going to accommodate their schedule. This field is a valuable asset, and it's hard to just keep it wide open. It's we had the discussion between facility and park. This is definitely a facility. It's definitely meant to be enclosed and used to the best of our ability, and I think something like that is great. And if we find that there's a void, that some of these hours aren't being used, bringing those down so that we can be more efficient with this field. That's my.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, initially I was worried that the 10 to 2 would go away, and I would feel like these hours might make it closed as a whole period, because I don't see a lot of people from DirecTV or the neighboring businesses playing during those times. That's way after work hours. But leaving the 10 to 2, I think, still gets people on the field as drop-ins. So I like option 2.
Okay, just to be sure, we haven't got to the 10 to 2 portion yet. We'll be talking about that one right after. So that's why I want to make sure that this is option 2 from basically 2 to 10.
Yep, like what I see, I agree. Let's run it for 6 months, see what it looks like. And again, I believe it's an education. So,
go ahead.
Do you have? Is there any desire to hear from the members who came to talk on this subject, or is that not appropriate? I ask a lot of inappropriate questions.
That's not
appropriate at this time.
Not appropriate.
Okay.
I think I know what one of them, but let's keep going here.
Okay.
Anything else on option 2?
If I could just chime in on one thing, understand just what little I do. I think a couple of the keys with having 2 people out there is that if we're going to have somebody in that cashier's office that is locked with cash at the very front, security is pretty big. Perhaps have it so that they can lock themselves in rather than have somebody on the outside lock them in, perhaps after the money is gone. And the other is that person, if he's going to be at that particular spot, that he perhaps has a walkie-talkie with the second person or some kind of communication. So if something is starting to go south, he can get the second person alerted and get more people to back them up. And those two people we put out there, I want to make sure that they're secure because it is relatively isolated. And when we're starting to talk about the drop-ins and with the last incident, I would hate to see any of our employees, especially since two of them are my kids, not necessarily out at that facility, but in general, whoever's going to be out there needs to be safe. And, you know, if it's as simple as a walkie-talkie for an intercom system or something like that, that'd be great. And if they could, you know, have the ability to kind of lock themselves in without having to worry, you know, if things were going south and they've got communication so that they could get people to assist them at a moment's notice.
I have one more question. Sean, does the organizations like AYSO, if they have it reserved from 6 to 8, do you know how many teams are supposed to be out there between 6 and 7? Does the staff know, like, there's supposed to be 4 teams out here and I see 5, so one of these should not be here? Or is it not that specific?
It depends. It depends. As I put it in, I try to be really kind of specific. Tyler and myself try to do as best we can to be really specific. Lubes is out there, Davis team, Boyle's team. We try to do that throughout the year. And there is some times where it is a very big block of like 3 o'clock to 10 o'clock AYSOs out there. So both, it's tough because sometimes with lacrosse, they don't give me every detail of every coach throughout. AYSO is the one group that gives me every single day of every single time. Lacrosse wouldn't give me all those details, so I could work with them on those types of things to get that information. But yes, we are playing a little bit of like, this is a lacrosse group, this is a lacrosse group, this is a football group. They probably shouldn't be there. So
right.
Yes, that's kind of what
and
we're doing.
I suppose most AYS, if it's a non-AYSO group, you can usually tell.
Possibly.
Because they're adults most of the time.
Yeah, you weren't going down the path of saying that the staff was going to police how the youth groups use the field, were you? Because you said, like, if a 5th team shows up, who cares? That's how AYSO was allocated.
I wasn't going down that path.
Okay.
I was more trying to help staff be able to identify if somebody's out here, like there's so many groups. One of, we got to.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, that's a challenge.
I'm hoping, and I have complete trust in staff and in Sean to make sure that if we give him direction, and it looks like we're going to give him direction, that he'll be able to take care of it. We have to believe that he will. So, I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to go with the overall field usage option number 2 from 2 o'clock to closing time, whatever that might be. That's my recommendation. Motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, let me ask one question. You're not directing the specific hours, though, are
No,
you?
I am not. It's whatever staff chooses.
Thank you.
But I think your motion does include an approximate, like we're trying to allocate some drop-in times, and that's approximate hours, or a chunk of 6 to whatever hours this is up there, right?
Okay, I'll amend my motion to say at least the proposed drop-in times, if staff decides they want to boost that that's up to them. So that is my motion. Is there a second to that?
I again second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No, that's 5-0. Got your direction there. Let's go to the 10 to 2, the drop-in time at 10 to 2. Can we go back to, was there a slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. By looking at the numbers that show up, that we were given, 10 to 2, I'm not sure that, I don't think it needs to be open. Next.
Lee, I kind of cut you off. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, no, I mean, when you look at that and you look at, nighttime, I mean, that time, and I drive by there to go to the post office and I look over and I see, the numbers, and, when you look at 122, for January, that's throughout the course of the month. It's a handful on any given day. Again, if if you want to look at streamlining it, great, but I can't see it staying the way it is right now. I think we need to do something to streamline that and, understand what the usage is. And when I look at these numbers, I think you could probably close it.
I just want to
During
make
that
sure,
time.
when I say close it, unless there's a reservation, obviously, right? Unless there's a reservation, but.
Absolutely. Anytime
Drop
somebody
in.
wants to reserve it, whether
I
it be
can't-
corporate or otherwise, with a number and a group, great.
The numbers, they're not lying. I don't think it's doing anybody any good.
So as I drive by that facility every day, it's unmistakable that there's a soccer game going on one of those fields at lunchtime for almost the duration. And I think, as Scott said, there are some days that it's more packed than others. I look at it is if we had these numbers, I forget what the pool numbers are. What the pool numbers are bigger than this, right, for drop-in? Arcia? Because 122 people using a pool over the course of the same amount of time will look like a larger group because it's a smaller area.
Much higher.
And $1,700 short relative to, from a profit and loss statement, right? So the question is, are the fees right, in my mind, relative to it? If we switch to you have to make a reservation at $110 an hour, I think folks are paying $5 to drop in now. You need 22 people to come out and use the field to be on par. So I'd question if those fee structures are potentially correct. I think there's a way to solve it, to come up with one solution or another. Because I think if the fee structure are right, because I think we want the youth in the local area who are coming in during the day to work, they appreciate where we're at. They're health conscious. They want to get out there. They want to use it. I think we should think about the local businesses that are right around there. And the idea of advertising a little bit more, I think there's opportunity there. And it's not a moneymaker. I have no idea that it would become one. It's a nice thing to have in an urban area, someplace you can go at lunchtime to get out and stretch your legs and get a little exercise in.
In option 2, you also have the option to pare it down to 2 days a week or 3 days a week. Meredith also had a good idea just now, maybe making it a 12 to 2 instead of a 10 to 2, if that's an option for you too.
Yeah, just a thought in the idea of closing it down. And what I see is we close it down, you got to make a reservation. Now you got to pay $110, and the groups of 8 aren't going to come out and pay for $110.
Alex?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to see it closed. It's just like I said, prefacing what my decision was for the last one is, then we're really saying there's no. How many people drop in between 6 and 8 now? Is there a number? Yeah, and I would like to gauge that because I think that it's the businesses around there that are the ones that are playing.
Well, see, Alex, the problem isn't that there's a current drop-in time and its usage. There is no drop-in time and people show up. So what we're doing is we're creating a spot so that people who want to use it in the evenings have a spot to be able to use it without encroaching on the reservation aspect. And then trying to just do that through structure to keep the conflict from occurring. So there is a group out there that's unserviced that needs, at least I think we've looked at it from what we've seen, needs a space. And if we can provide it to them, it may alleviate the pressure you see on the youth groups.
Gotcha. And that would be more looking at, say, the residents that are trying to use the drop-in times?
From the 6 o'clock and after, we don't have any statistics. We don't know. It's all observational. So this is all for the stuff that's at the 10 to 2 hour, right, Sean?
Yeah, that's what it says on here. I see that. I get that.
It says 10 to 2, Monday through Friday. I'm looking at that. 7 residents in July.
Yeah.
7, only 7.
And 122 people who I would bet you work within 500 feet of that field.
Quick math, I think the lowest was February with an average of 4 per day, and the highest I think was July and March were both around 8 per day. So that game of 8 is as many as they get on average for the entire month.
Mhm.
So I'm leaning toward more of what Bob and Lee are saying, which is close the facility from 10 to 2. I don't. If we were paying 2 staff for an average of, let's say 6, go right in the middle.
I don't think
6 people
I'll
for
just put it out there. I don't think these numbers are right. I don't think we're counting the right head numbers, because the bodies I see out there are greater than what I'm seeing in the list that's here.
Well, that's a new twist.
So now you're questioning the numbers that they collected.
I will say anecdotally, driving by it, I drive by it a couple times a day. And so
I'm having a hard time with that. I have a hard time saying that staff is giving us bad information. I'll say impossible. I'll just say it. Impossible.
Well, I think regardless of where it lies, I think for our discussion tonight, we got to say these are accurate. If we don't, then why have the discussion?
Okay.
And I'll go back to my average of 6. If you probably did all of these divided by all the days, it's about 6 per day. And then if you do it by hour, that's 6 for a 4-hour period. So we're talking about 1.5 people per hour. We're having 2 staff members out there. I think if we had any other facility where we were paying 2 staff members for 1.5 people per hour, we'd say,
no, I'm with you on that.
Close it.
I'm deeply rooted in that the numbers don't match. And Sean said earlier that from DirecTV, there's 25 to 50 people that drop in.
I actually was going to recommend that because Fridays are so popular, that we consider saying close it from Monday through Thursday, keep it open on Fridays. And if there's a huge, backlash, then we can always, it's not forever. We can always say, well, hey, we didn't know that there was, maybe we can open on Thursdays and Fridays from 10 to 2. So we could go back a little bit. Because Fridays was so popular. That's what I was going to say. Close it Monday through Thursday, keep it open on Fridays, see how that goes. That was my thought.
That's a possibility, but 10 to 2. If it's lunchtime that's happening, lunchtime is 12 o'clock or 11:30 usually. So the 12 to 2 possibly. 10 to 2, too long. I just don't see there any. And the numbers, I'm going to say the numbers don't lie. And if we wanted to go, if you said Thursday, Friday, 12 to 2, I might go with that.
Is there a specific time in between between 10 and 2 that the bulk of the people are there? Like, are all 8 of these people between 11 and 12?
Generally speaking, you would probably. I've been sick, by the way. I apologize. Generally speaking, I would say it's around the lunchtime hour. The other thing to talk about with this.
What do you mean?
12 to 1.
12 to 1.
Like a traditional, 12 to 1. The Wednesday group, we have a DirecTV group that reserves the field with Tyler and I every single week. That same group, because the guy, and I'm just giving you kind of insight of what's going on in our world, is the guy was tired of dealing with collecting the money. So he said, come in and let's do this without that. So if it were to go away on Friday, they would just reserve the field on Friday from 12 to 1. So that example of 25, because it is kind of the outlier of the Monday through Friday situation, that's what they would do.
Well, that sounds like a better idea then, because it was about the approximate same cost anyway.
That already.
Yep.
Exactly.
Then my recommendation at hearing that is it's closed unless you want to reserve it from 10 to 2.
Is there a motion?
I want to hear more from Rick and Alex, just to see if they can convince me otherwise.
Is there a way to open it for reservations, like make them, the drop-ins, make reservations, but drop the price so that they can afford to play daily?
I would have to sit. I'm going to let him answer, but go ahead.
That would probably have to go to City Council for all the fees and all those different things. So we put, Bob and these guys have put this together for years. So if that were to come up, we'd have to go to City Council and go down that road to put that fee in place.
Fees were determined by the fees allocation task force, and then City Council approved them. So they are approved fees.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll make a motion. I move that we direct staff to I don't know what date would make sense to do so. You'd probably have to give people a little bit of time to get used to it. I don't know, leave that up to them, but my motion is to direct staff to close the facility from 10 to 2 except for reservations.
Wording it possibly that 10 to 2 is reservation only, or by reservation, right? The same thing.
In fact, you could probably attach the other option we looked at started at 2. You could just open it up at 10, and I think that other policy covers this, because it's basically here are the drop-in times, and everything else is reservation.
So you're just getting rid of the word drop-in from 10 to 2.
Right.
There isn't
a drop-in at 10 to 2 anymore, right? That's
but right now it's open from 10 to 2 and then reserved basically from 2 to after that, right?
That's where it's at.
So
if you close it,
reservation only from 10 to 2.
Right. That's, I think, the path that we're on.
Sorry. I'll second it. I'm sorry? Reservation only, 10 to 2. Great question. It is, because Saturday, I'm going to ask, go ahead.
I was assuming we're talking
Monday
about
through
just
Friday is
Friday
what we're
the whole
talking
time.
about,
Yes.
correct? Because Saturday and Sunday are reserved already.
Yeah, with all our youth groups and everything else, yes.
That was seconded.
Do I need to rephrase my motion, or are you good?
I did.
Let me ask one question, though. There should probably be a transition time. Sean, how long do you think you might need to inform the folks who are currently using? Do you have a...
Yeah, I think February 1st seems like a kind of a short turnaround, so I would imagine a March 1st. I mean, we can go with whatever, but give some people some time. Frankly, staff, letting them know what's going on too.
Yeah.
That's another factor in the conversation. There's guys that are out there informing.
So do some sort of signage that says transition to be to reservations starting March 1st?
Probably right on the
Inform.
same lines of the
Yeah.
drop-in times for the other option as well. Yeah.
There's a motion, there's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Was that 5-0?
It was.
I'm sorry?
It was.
It was 5-0. Staff, please make sure everyone is safe out there. And thank you for all your hard work so far on this. Okay. We're still in new business. Consideration and possible action to increase golf course and driving range fees at the lakes at El Segundo Golf Course as recommended by the Golf Course Subcommittee. Fiscal impact is none, but I think there will be some. But approve the proposed fee increases for the lakes at El Segundo and recommend staff to proceed to City Council, or to alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. Meredith?
All right, thank you very much. Well, you have the information in your report, as well as the chart that shows the proposed fees versus what's currently at the golf course. But basically, as you know, back in October, the Topgolf proposal was not approved. And what I've been focusing on with the management company and the golf course subcommittee, and what the city council has really directed us to do is, while we're looking into the long-term solutions of the golf course and its financial operations, there's also some short-term policy decisions that we can make that will improve the performance of the lakes. And so this has been discussed at the golf course subcommittee. Both Lee and Alex have participated, and the last time that fees were increased or discussed to be increased was really 2013, before Topgolf, or right in the beginning of the Topgolf conversations, and the subcommittee really just decided at that time to keep the conversation going, but to not implement new fees, just given the uncertainty of the future at the facility. And so it's definitely time to adjust the fees. And these, again, proposed fees had come out of the management company. I sat down with them. We talked in more detail, refined some of them before we went to the golf course subcommittee. And then this golf course subcommittee voted to approve the proposed fees. Scott did stick around, so if you have any specific questions on how it impacts play or number of rounds of golfs or buckets played, he might be able to assist with details like that. But what we've proposed here, it's estimated to increase the annual revenue by maybe about $65,000 to $70,000. We realize that in raising fees, there probably will be some attrition. However, we also feel that they aren't being raised so much that it takes it, out of the competitive market. So the lake still remains one of the best courses around. It's unique in what it offers in the 9 holes, that it has the 2 par 4s, that it has a great driving range that's usable and clean and lit. And so the golf course subcommittee recommends that the commission move this along, and it does require city council approval.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I only have one, but go ahead, please.
As a member of the task force committee, I'm aware of a lot of things that we're looking for the long term, and we're more focused on the long term. The actual golf course commission is a little bit different. When we talk about the annual revenue increase from $65,000 to $70,000, it doesn't mention what that money is going to be used for and where it goes within that budget. Could you elaborate? Is that going to be for CapEx? Is that going to be for, exactly what is that money going to be used for when we do raise it?
Well, according to the golf course financials, it's operating at a loss of $200,000 to $300,000 a year, and so this revenue is really just to close the gap at this point.
So when you say that, that'll just help the city not contribute as much as it has been, so that we will see it in general fund returns, even though it's okay.
Yeah, it's not designated towards capital.
I know you're going to have people asking what's that money going to go to, and just to minimize the debt towards that facility, which is fine.
Does an increase in fees and/or a reduction in number of patrons because of that increase in fees affect the management company's finances? Because I don't understand the structure of how they make their money. So what I'm saying is, does fewer number of people coming there look bad on them? I know that they're involved in this, but how does that work?
Well, the current management contract, the structure is that there's a management fee, a monthly management fee that's paid to Lane Donovan, and it's not incumbent upon participation or numbers or revenue or anything.
So, Bob, I have a number of items. I'll go first or last or somewhere in between, whatever you tell me to go.
Go right ahead.
You want me to go first?
We'll play second fiddle to you tonight. That's right.
So one of the things I want to be very wary of is derailing all the work that other people have done to get this in front of me, and then I come up and act like I know what I'm talking about. So please accept my apologies in advance for anything that I say that you've vetted for months and years, and now I'm saying, what about this? Okay, so that's my disclaimer. Some of these are going up $1. They haven't gone up in years. My first question is, I'm sure that everyone discussed, should it go up $2 or $3? We settled on $1, but to me, $2 increase is kind of the same as a $1 increase. And so if, I mean, my first thing I wrote on this page was, is this enough of a raise of prices? So I'm sure the answer is yes, it's been vetted, but I just want to throw that out there that I thought that I was expecting to see a little bit more in some of these, and rather than just $1. I know some of them go up $2 and things, but as far as the 9-hole play, between 15, 16, 17, or 10, 11, 12, I don't know. I was thinking maybe we could help the budget a little more. That's my first comment. My second one is there a need for Twilight? Does that actually, will that bring people to the course? I know that most courses have it, but is that something that we expect? And how do you do the time wise? Has that all been? I mean, it's been vetted, and that will be helpful, and they'll get more people out there to play at Twilight when they normally wouldn't.
Yeah, so Scott can speak to that.
Yeah, that'll definitely help. We often get players that come late in the afternoon or asking for a twilight rate, which many courses do offer that. And then that time will change throughout the clock and the sun.
And when they find out they have to pay the full rate, they say, all right, never mind?
Most of the time, yeah. And then they'll either go to the driving range for less or...
The one I love is almost every time I've played, someone's in line who says they're a resident. Like I'd say 4 of the last 5 times. Oh, no, I'm a resident. And then the person says, oh, can I see your ID? Oh, let me go get that from the car. And then either they don't come back or they come back and say, oh, I couldn't find it. It's kind of funny. Okay, just an aside. All right. Do non-resident seniors pay the non-resident rate or the senior rate for the monthly pass? Do non-resident seniors pay the non-resident rate or the senior rate? Like there, you see what I'm saying? There's no senior non-resident on that.
I don't believe we have a non-resident senior
It's just
rate.
they're non-residents. That's the way I would
Correct.
take it.
So they pay the non-resident. If you're a senior, you pay the non-resident rate.
Right, for the monthly pass.
Correct.
My next one you're going to laugh at. New. So when I get a large bucket of 105, almost every time 104 and 105 spill out. True, like really, like it's right there. It's perfect. It's like right the size. So, no, I know this sounds crazy, but when I saw 110, I thought to myself, I don't see any reason to raise it to 110. The buckets fit 105 precisely, basically. And the difference between, I assume that the background is that, we're raising the rates, so let's give them a couple extra balls. So then we can say, well, no, but you get extra balls. And probably that's the philosophy. But to me, it actually it's probably not necessary. And it doesn't change. And again, if this has been vetted and tell me to shut up, I'm fine with that. These are the thoughts that, the things I wrote down. I don't see any need to go to 105 to 110. I also don't see any need to go to 70 to 75. All it does is keep people out on the range more. So if we're going to raise rates, let's just raise rates and keep the number of balls the same. That would have been my recommendation had I been on the committee. I don't know if you want to talk about that or not. No, I looked at the price per ball, and I understand why.
Well,
I figured that there's...
You didn't give them 5 extra balls, though.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, I looked at the, the ratios.
If you're going to raise the price, raise the price.
Okay, well, I don't know. I was okay with that one, all right? I was okay with that. I see the ratios make sense. I don't see why we raise the number of balls. Okay, and then my last one, well, for now, is on the driving range discounts. If I'm understanding this, I believe you, like say the current, par, you pay $30 for $35 worth of range balls.
Of range value, of range.
Right,
range
value.
Right.
So the proposed change for the birdie 60 for 100 is actually a better deal than the eagle now. So that needs to be looked at. I would rather pay 60 for 100 ratio-wise than pay 110 for 150. That's actually the lower one is a better deal, so that needs to be looked at. That's all for now.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I'll start at the bottom and probably stay there. The driving range discounts in themselves, are those traditional for the type of discounts you see for buying something that long? Because those are pretty deep. I mean, the bottom one is 40%. And actually, it's 40% discount now on the birdie one as well.
We spent a lot of time with Meredith on the percentages on that.
We did, and I'd have to go back and look. I know that the birdie was the only one that we were going to change. This may be a bit of a error.
Just even looking at the current ones. I mean, the current rate is $250 for $400 worth of
value. I mean, the theory behind it is to get the money up front and to keep them coming back, and that's it. I mean, I agree with you.
I don't know if 40 is right. 30's right, if 50's right. I unlike Dave Lubes, I don't get out and golf much anymore because of my back. But so I don't know what the standards are there. I just know that on Black Friday, boy, that'd be great discounts going out in the local market to find.
And they'd love to see they'd love to see that. Alex, anything?
I think if I could chime in on the discount keys, the conversation that we did have was the reason why we're changing just the Birdie is I think the Birdie and the Eagle were the same discount percentage, and so maybe the intention here was to go to $60 for $75. I think that's what it was discussed as, and this is an error, which makes it a 20% discount.
No,
and then your discount gets greater as you go up.
So there's a change there then?
Yes.
60 for
75.
There you go. That makes more sense.
Right. So that differentiates that discount percentage.
Anything else you see there? I'm again, since Dave was bringing up, why not a little more? Why not $2? Why not? If it's only $1, why is it not $1 and everything?
So I brought this question.
You were
up
there,
when,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
that was my first question actually. Why is it just $1 here and not more? And I would think it was not to disturb the force, so to speak, and not to create an attrition number that would be really high. So we can get it's so subtle the raise in price here that people wouldn't look at it and say, "Nah, I'm leaving."
Okay, there had to be a reason.
I almost disagree because I know some guys on Thursday afternoon that are going to complain to no tomorrow. But that's irrelevant. Yeah, don't worry. It's my group and I can deal with that. Yeah, no, you're always going to get, with any fee raise, you're going to get people grumbling. And whether it be $1 or $4, you're going to get it. It's what you're more concerned about is attrition. And if the committee believes that $1 is where the attrition would happen, so be it.
And regarding the resident rate only being raised $1, that one's kind of more of a, the percentage of residents that utilize the facility is so low. So it's more of a, let's maintain that lower rate and accessibility for the residents.
I was trying to get answers to Dave's questions, and that's why I don't know if it satisfies, but there's a reason. But I still have, and I only circled one thing on this whole page. I thought it's great. I think the fees should absolutely be raised. But if everything went up except for the small bucket, why not? Why?
It was really just an analysis thing. I mean, some of the courses don't even have that warm-up bucket. And that's essentially what it is. It's a warm-up bucket. It's not meant to you're not meant to be there for a good amount of time practicing necessarily. It's simply for warm-up. As far as raising the ball count, we did look at the number of balls that the other ranges provide, and this brought it more in line with that. And it doesn't cost us more to put 5 more balls in the bucket. So it's kind of a give and take, more of a perception thing probably.
You don't have to buy new large buckets?
We'll give you a solo cup on the side.
I'm good with the fees. Anybody have anything else they want to say?
Are you able to just relook at those couple little things and before it goes to council and adjust if necessary? I mean, staff can just either take what we said and, do it or not based on that discussion. Is that?
Well, definitely what I can do is take the feedback back to the golf course subcommittee, which they meet on February 7th. So most likely that'll be before it gets to council. I think this will probably be on the February 20th council meeting.
Okay. That'll be before we meet, right? Yeah. So what direction do you want to give? What direction do you want to give, I guess?
Do you need a motion and a second to approve the whole sheet?
Yes.
With potential small tweaks to go
Sure.
before the subcommittee?
Yeah.
That's my motion.
What is the small tweak so we're going to approve as written with which exception?
Well, the one correction I want to.
One
make sure I get
correction,
there.
right, that was.
With the one at the
The
bottom.
60 for 75, down on the driving range discount keys.
The birdie and the eagle discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
But just the birdie.
Well, okay.
It's just the proposed on the birdie, because that's the only thing that's changing.
Right. They may need to adjust one up and one down. I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you look at the birdie, the change would be in the proposed 6475, not 6400. It was, we'll call it a typo. Okay? That gives you your number, about 22%.
Well, no, 60 for 75 won't work, because I can get 60 for 70 by doing 2 pars. So it just needs to go back, I think, and readjust it, one way or the other. But no, that won't work either.
Good public math.
Thank you.
Do you have, okay. Do you understand what he's saying?
Well, 60 for $75 worth is a better deal than 60 for $70.
Bad public math. You're right. You're right.
Yeah,
it's hard to.
I was wondering where you were going. I was trying to get it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I'm good.
and then looking at the numbers too, I think the birdie, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, the birdie was the most purchased discount here. So by doing this, we're sort of trying to get them up a level as well.
Okay. What else, Dave?
Then my motion is to, with that proposed change, to approve the fee increases to move on to council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
And then the feedback is, why not more? Why
That
just a
is
dollar?
definitely our feedback.
And then maybe it's not necessary to increase the number of balls.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the other thing too is we haven't had a fee increase in 4 years. Right? So the another thing to think about is, should we revisit this again in 2019?
I think that's definitely the conversation at the subcommittee level, is getting it back on an annual review.
Yeah. To climb out of the red.
Okay. We're to reports. Aquatic Subcommittee. Is there one?
Yes, there is. We met, was it Tuesday, January 16th? We got some construction updates along with the budget and cost sharing updates. Some of it is that we are going to be looking at a prolonged opening time. The soil mitigation from the rains last year, along with the change in the ramp, and given soil mitigation on our end with asbestos, is going to change it. They have a tentative date. I'm not going to hold anyone to that right now. We do have some discrepancies on when that may or may not. We're going to try to get it a little closer to the beginning of the school year rather than what they're proposing. So it's no great surprise if you've listened to the number of things that they've had setbacks with the school, the gym, and now coming to the north end where the pool is. It's now where we're looking to be a little bit more aggressive in our timeline and be a little bit more the priority, I think, was probably one of the words I used in the meeting. The recruitment update we got from Arcia. Real quickly, we have, I believe there was 11 candidates for supervisor, 19 for the coordinator. HR has reduced it down to, I believe, 6 and 9. for those respective positions, and towards the end of the month, we'll be looking at those candidates, get them online so that they can start building a team and a program for the aquatic centers. Along the lines of what we just got done with fee recommendations, we had Stu come in via conference call, talk about the current fee structure and how we're going to be realigning it for the new complex. There was some talk about changing the fee structure at the plunge, and that's still a debate on how we're going to do that. But we're looking at how some of the things we actually don't make, we're charging money for, but perhaps not making money on, and that's going to be addressed in the new pool for sure. Given the condition of the plunge, it's hard to really start adjusting prices for that. Briefly touched on the equipment purchasing, which are the scoreboards and stuff like that, and then the South Bay Sports update. At the end of the year, we did have another large donation. Off the top of my head, I believe it was Chevron came in. Their accountant stated that they had some money that could be donated to nonprofits, and was donated to the South Bay Sports Health and Recreation Foundation for the pool. So that's basically where we left it.
Okay, thank you. Golf course subcommittee, Alex. Okay, thank you. The Lakes Task Force, I think their meeting was canceled. Is that correct?
The January 11th meeting was canceled, but as I mentioned earlier, the community survey will be going out tomorrow. And we are currently awaiting a facility assessment report from a third party who came in and took a look at the condition of the course and the various amenities, and we'll have a really good understanding of what capital improvements and estimated costs might be over the next 10, 20 years.
Thank you.
Real quick, just one thing to add to that, and the other point was that we are going to be looking at a person to come in and help us with the RFP, somebody who's real familiar with golf RFPs and the running of it, so that if we're starting to look towards a direction, we want to make sure it's been, done before and it's done professionally and done right the first time, and not having to consistently repeat our efforts.
Okay. Youth Sports Council.
No meetings last month. Our next one is the 30th of January. And we'll be talking about the upcoming spring seasons.
Thank you. Department staff reports. Aricia.
Yes, I don't have anything new. You have my report in front of you. Lee actually gave the announcement that I was going. You and Meredith always do that to me. No, that I was going to give about hiring staff, and we have interviews coming up, as he said, on the 23rd for the coordinators and 25th for the supervisor. We did start a marketing specialist as of Monday. His name is Gerardo Cueto, and he will be taking pretty much the position that Neil Von Plu had. So he's starting to get his feet wet and trying to get our flyers and our marketing tools all together. So we look forward to working with him. And that's all I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. Christopher.
Good evening. You have my report. I'll take on any questions. I will add to that we survived most recent rains, and I think we're already seeing the effects of it in some of the turf grasses in the parks and so forth.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
How do the hedges look over at Holly?
They look very small.
they're real small, but they will grow.
Yes, they will.
You have to start somewhere. What were they doing out on the softball field today?
They were laser level.
They were lasering?
Yes. And that will continue tomorrow, and then they will be moving over to the Richmond.
Great.
As well.
Overdue. Thank you. Dan, do you want to step up? And I will tell you, great work on all of your items. Everyone, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. You have my report in front of you. Happy birthday, El Segundo, as it wanes into the sunset. But of course, you can see all the programming on El Segundo TV on YouTube. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Great work. Thank you. Department Directors Report. Meredith.
I don't have anything to add tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Farfan. Alex.
Thank you for the video. It was wonderful.
Commissioner Pierce.
Wanted to go circle back. Our officers are very brave, very honorable. We recognize 2 members who were in extraordinary circumstances and performed bravely and honorably. I am absolutely positive that the other officers on our force do that by having seen it many times. They're a great resource. They're great citizens. Glad to have them. Meredith, for you and the staff, probably 15 months of work and planning for the 100-year celebration. Hurt braves throughout the whole year. Very well done to everyone. Great job.
Thank you. Commissioner Lubes.
First, thanks to Chris and Dan for staying here tonight. Very kind of you. Secondly, again, with the officers as well, we cannot possibly, in my opinion, thank them enough for what they do for us, put their lives at risk every single day. And these 2 in particular, I'm so happy that I'm just honored to be involved with the decision. Anyone sitting here would have made the same decision, but I get to be one of those who says I got to vote on that, and I'm proud of that. And then lastly, with regard to the last year or 2 years really leading up to the 100-year celebration, the most remarkable thing about it is that there weren't any tasks that you guys got to take off your plate. So it's just on top of everything. It's like a 2-year period where you just get slammed over and over for 2 years. And not that it's so easy now that it's over. I'm not trying to say that, but whenever you're given a project when you're in any position, on top of what you're already doing, it becomes more impressive how great it was done. So, thank you.
Vice Chairperson Davis.
Absolutely. Once again, with the Centennial, it's I've sat there and I've watched Meredith, sit there talking to me about a $12 million pool while she's having a side conversation with somebody how to trim a tree at City Hall. And the diversity that you have to deal with, and then coming in and having to do the Centennial, and how massive the entire thing got and came off so well. I think we can hopefully lay it to bed, and you guys could take a deep breath and actually have the time to enjoy a lunch from this for a little while. So thank you very much, and I thought it went off great. I think we had Sergeant Lincoln in here talking about Lieutenant Garcia and Officer O'Connor, and we all said that I can't believe it took 10 years. I know that they had a lot of commendations in the last 10 years. I'm glad that we have this point to tell them that they're not forgotten. Having a 10-year period to say, hey, you served then, but you're still remembered today, is perhaps even better than having done everything in the first year. So it was really an honor to, again, say yes to that, and anyone would do it. But I felt proud to be able to tell them, yeah, we haven't forgot about you. It's your 10, I hate to say an anniversary for something tragic, but they do it every day, and there's a whole lot of guys behind them. And when you honor them, you're honoring their entire department, and they represent it well, and couldn't be happier to do that.
You guys said it all, but again, thanking all the police officers and firefighters, all public safety. Thank you very much for what you do for us. And I'm just going to stand up and give staff a standing ovation for everything they've done for the last 2 years.
And like Meredith said, not just Recreation Park staff, right? It's the whole city staff. There are lots of people who had to do extra work.
And we'll go back to public communications. Step up, state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Kelly Watson, and I'm also with AYSO. As well, I coach the girls' middle school team in El Segundo. Coach and a player of soccer. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for taking action on the campus El Segundo situation. I think you've made a great stride tonight in trying to alleviate some of the problems that we're experiencing there. I appreciate that you chose option 2 as a compromise, and that is in your nature. My concern still lies with how we handle the drop-in situation. And I'll just put out there to you that I would like, and I recognize that you said you would consider it again in a few months. The drop-in situation, I know we likened it to the plunge, but the one major difference between soccer and swimming is that I can't play soccer alone. There's really only a couple of scenarios in which there would be less than 10 people engaged on that soccer field. And none of them, I think, are the spirit with which Commissioner Pierce was talking about when he was talking about drop-ins, because we would all like there to be a place for us to go and play soccer and get out at lunch and participate. I guess the problem is that the drop-in situation only really allows for people to do that without paying the full rate to reserve campus. Or if they wanted to participate as part of like a house team, like there are other facilities that have a model for drop-ins, like the Galaxy Futsal Center, where you participate. If you don't have a team already, you join the house team, and so drop-ins can kind of engage that way. But the facility is still booked during that time, and it's still paid the entire rate. Your prorated membership fee is a proration of the total fee. But it still acknowledges that you need a team and that there will be a group of you out there and that it's not just going to be a single person. I think that what we are going to find with the drop-ins is that it continues to muddy the water between who's supposed to be there and who's not. And that additionally, the people that are using the drop-in are going to use it for things that are the unintended consequence, like making money to coach 1v1 one-on-one, or showing up to stand at the PK mark and kick 1,000 balls into the goal, which we've all acknowledged kind of creates a lot of the wear and tear that we're finding around the PK mark. So I would just urge that when you consider this, one of the reasons I think that the softball field is locked and that you can only get in there if you have a reservation is because you can't play softball alone. And I would suggest that the same thing occurs with soccer and lacrosse and football and any of the other small groups that are trying to get on this facility. So I think while it would be great if we had unlimited park space in this town and that anyone could just go to a park and sit down and play and get a group together, the reason I think you set the reservation at 9 was because you really can't play soccer with less than 10 people. So if you're a group of 9 or more, you're there for a soccer game and probably should have booked the facility. And I think in that case, it's very clear who's supposed to be there and who's not supposed to be there. So respect, I think you did a great job tonight, but I wanted to just add that one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will adjourn to the next regular meeting on Wednesday, February 21st at 6 p.m.